Okay, today on LO Lowdown, we've got Kevin Brierton with us from Phoenix, Arizona. Actually, technically Scottsdale, Arizona. Don't have to say that, Kevin, to get that right.
Yes. Yeah.
Glad you could take some time to speak with us today on our program.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We and for everybody, who doesn't know Kevin, I can just tell you he is one of our best. So I always start with the same thing because it's always fascinating. You might be, I say this all the time, maybe you're the first person that, grew up as a grade school or middle schooler and wanted to be a mortgage banker, but that would make you unique for sure. But how did you get into this business? What was your step into being in the mortgage business?
Step into the business was actually, if you roll it back, I always visioned myself walking on Wall Street with like a suit on and a briefcase. For whatever reason, I always pictured that when I was growing up. But the reality is I'm from a small town. I like big cities to travel to, but I don't love living in a big city as far as just feeling claustrophobic. So I kind of knew I wanted to do something with money, but I went to school did a finance degree and a marketing degree, or almost got my marketing degree, got a finance degree. And I got out and I had a friend that her dad was in the mortgage business and worked at Countrywide and lived in Colorado, had a $2.5 million house. Back then, that was a really nice house. Now it's kind of just like a normal house, I guess, $2.5 million.
3-bedroom, 2-bath in Colorado.
Yeah. So it was a really nice house. And, I'm like, and personality wise, I'm like, I think I could do this, and so it just clicked. And so I got in the business. I actually almost went the financial advisor route early on. But when you're 22 years old, just out of college, and you don't really have a lot of connections, I'm from California. I moved down from Northern Arizona to the Scottsdale area out of college. I had some friends, but I didn't have a huge database to lean on for financial advising. So I decided to go the mortgage route pretty early on in 2004. So for me, it just kind of perked my interest of an alternative to trying to get people to give me their money. I was actually able to give them money. So I just enjoyed it and got some great training at the very beginning of the process and laid a great foundation.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm going to say you may fall into that category. You were talking about it at a young age and you just something to do with money. So, that was pretty spot on versus, some of the original careers that we heard. But I will say the common factor, right, is knowing somebody, seeing somebody, a friend's, that is definitely a common characteristic and something that we've seen. Wow. Fascinating. So, when you think about, obviously what you've done, you're in Scottsdale, booming market. What is your secret for Bill? I mean, as you even said, your relationships early on, you didn't have a lot. Is there a secret that you think makes you unique, or just in general, how have you built these referral relationships and how do you keep them going?
I think it all goes back to honestly the subprime crash and just having the stamina to stay in the business. I remember this flight to flying back to Chicago to see family in 2007-ish. And I read a book from Warren Buffett. It's called Snowball. But he talks about just sticking to what you know. And I literally stopped reading the book right then. I think I still have the little napkin in that spot. And it just, his investment advice was just stick to what you know and get really good at it. And at the time I was like, well, maybe it's 3 years into the business. And I'm like, well, maybe I go into other business to business sales and other things. And I'm like, you know what, I'm 3 years into this, I could do this, and so, as I rewind it for the success, honestly, it was just doing whatever it took to be successful. And obviously being compliant with that, because I saw people very not compliant in the subprime days. So when I say that means that picking up a serving job at night because I wanted to do mortgages, but I got to pay the bills. So the mortgage business was, falling apart. So I had literally served tables for 4 or 5 months. Maybe a little bit longer than that at night. So I worked during the day doing mortgages and serving tables till late at night, and then get up and do it all over again. Subprime crash happened, went into a call center, just got really good at being super efficient. That was really the key. Really good growth for me because I had a really good 4 or 5 year foundation before I went in there. and then just really learned from really, really good producers that also had come to the call center after the mortgage market collapsed. And then I went to the retail world after that at Chase, and then just started kind of forming relationships and bringing back the base of the business. And then honestly, it just digging deep and getting the right process down.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I had the foundation, 10-year foundation of great business knowledge, but I realized in 14 that I had to actually build my own business. It was connected to me, that they were coming to me, not just calling some other bank, and I just happened to be on the other end of the phone. So at 14, I got introduced to Todd Duncan and Todd Duncan's boot camp. And man, it was a game changer because I learned that, I had to bring that value to my and a deep connection to the realtor partners and financial advisors I worked with and the families I was working with, to go deeper and really understand what's most important to them and build the relationships by meaningful relationships. So it was a slow build, honestly. Coming out and rebuilding my whole business in 14 after 10 years in the business, but laying the foundation with the right connections was really key, and that's
Mhm.
why I'm where I'm at today. Is just laying the foundation, and then it's just doing the activities to keep the relationships alive.
What's interesting you say, I mean, you could put it in any industry, right? It's just the hard work, right? I mean, so you mentioned you knew you had a plan. Here's what you wanted to do, but yet you were waiting tables and working at night, right, to support that dream. And it's just that commonality, right, is hard work is very rarely replaced with anything else, right? It looks easy once you
100%.
achieve it, because there's a lot of people that are going to watch this, Kevin, and they're going to be like, wow, he must have known a bunch of realtors, or his mom and dad are realtors or whatnot. But what it is, it's hard work, and you paid the price.
Yep. I think the last couple of days I've been the first one in the office every day. It's just little things like that, and just make the difference.
Yeah. What does your team look like now? So how do you work within
So
your team?
it's been an evolution to get to this point, and this is really what I've been working towards, and they're amazing. So I have a production manager that's amazing. He manages mainly contract to close, but he's an awesome resource. We try to keep him, focused on the pipeline process. So, everything from sending disclosures. He kind of just honestly does probably too much, but he's amazing at it. So he does disclosures, he does doc collection, he submits to underwriting, he processes the loan, he orders insurance. Again, a lot of that stuff needs to come off his plate at some point, but he's amazing. So he's kind of my right hand. We've been working together for about 7 years, and then super knowledgeable. He also fights underwriting if underwriting's wrong or needs help on understanding the guidelines. He's there. And then I have 2 front end people. I have a kind of a lead intake partner where if like right now the phone rings, he's answering the phone and helping that client move in the front of the line and make sure they get help right away. He's either going to take the application, put him on my calendar for a pre-purchase consultation, and then I have a kind of loan partner 2, if you will. He's structuring pre-approvals up front, and he's a hybrid, taking over some of the back-end process so he can continue to even learn more and be connected to the back end. So I have 3: lead intake, front end person that helps me structure and get the loan set up right, and then the back end production manager.
Wow. And you said that's been an evolution. So you've
Yep.
kind of probably started with one person and then have grown into the team of yourself plus the 3.
Correct. So I think it's just what I've learned about that is just being clear about what the roles are. And, and the hard part is as people learn, you could put more stuff on their plate. So then their role evolves too. And so as the role evolves, then they could take more, and then you go, okay, well, they could do that. Now we got to bring somebody else on. And so I think scalability in the business is super important. And the biggest issue with loan officers is they're stuck, doing everything and then they're not selling. So they become not an originator. They're really just, a loan assistant at that point. The originator's job is to originate and make the phone ring, is how we view it. And then all the other stuff shouldn't be on the originator's plate.
Yeah, I know you and I have talked about that as well, and it's probably, one of my biggest passion projects, right, is to figure out what, all of the things that we can try to lift off of a valuable sales resource such as yourself, and not burden, even burdening your team is a problem with it for us, but how do we make it even more efficient? And so you said it right on, is your job is you have the gift to be able to build those relationships and generate volume from it, and anything that's distracting is unproductive. So I think that's a great message. What about, you mentioned it a little bit with your production manager, working with underwriting, et cetera. Any tips that you have out there for how you and your team interact with operations to have things, flow as smooth as possible?
So we try to be as, courteous as possible. I'm very big on doing the research ahead of time. So if you're going to, call out an underwriter that they're wrong, let's say, you better have done the research behind it and not just say, hey, why are we doing this? Like, you got to go, hey, here's the underwriting guideline. Here's why we think we should overturn this, but do the research ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is, if you become the person that's always just this nagging person that underwriting hates to deal with or processing hates to deal with, then that's not going to help you form your relationships that you need. We need the operational people there. And it shouldn't be that we're butting heads. Rather, we're working together for a common goal. And there's just naturally in the business, there's a natural butting of heads there, unfortunately. And sometimes it's kind of necessary for underwriting to validate, make sure it's a real loan. So I think it's necessary at a certain point. But my thing is you just have to be courteous, and you have to understand where they're coming from, and you have to do your research. I think that's really, really important. Like, go in, dig in, find out why, and you need to understand. You need to be able to support that information and why you're bringing that to the underwriter's attention. So I'm a big believer in, I don't even let underwriting underwrite the file. We underwrite the file. That's what I'm big on.
Wow, that's a soundbite. It's interesting you bring that up, because it's another area where you do have people say, well, we do this on a model and process, but it really comes down to, I think, the key that you pointed out is do your research or know your stuff, and then go in with a courteous, everyone has a job to do. And you instantly have respect when you show up that way, right? Versus the person who, no one wants to hear no, right? That's our job. We don't want to hear no. And so being able to, make a case and use, what we do best in sales skills makes a ton of sense. I love the answers, because it's just not complicated, right? But complicated and hard, it doesn't mean it's not hard. It's hard, but it's not complicated. So that's a great way to break it down. What about, so, one of the things, kind of switching gears a little bit, technology has continued to be a big part of what we, our customers talk about in the industry. Kind of two questions for you. Is there a piece of technology that you and your team, I mean, obviously we know you have to use H2O, but outside of that, that you and your team have found to be, live or die, you got to have it. And then the second part of the question is there something, as you kind of look at the evolving face of the industry, something that you think technology needs to solve?
So I'll give you the best form of technology. You know what it is? It's my old flip phone right here. So I kind of joke, because actually,
wait a minute, that's one of those new fancy ones though.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Okay, yeah, it looks
so
cool.
I kind of joke, because the best technology, honestly, we have is the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest issue is we have call reluctance. So call reluctance, I've learned to solve by using a dialer. And because what happens is once you start making your calls, so I follow a daily success plan of calling realtors on Mondays, calling my in-process calls on Tuesdays, calling database on Wednesdays, calling pre-approvals and the agents attached to them on Thursdays. All of it's to continue to generate business. And a lot of models have something similar to that. The biggest problem is I'm going to sit down, I'm going to make all my calls, start making one call. Oh, you know what? That underwriter needs something. Okay, let me put that aside. And so what I found is the best way to do this is turn your ringer off, dial into a dialer, make the calls, make the 30 calls or 20 calls you need to make, but have your ringer off. So I learned this trick a couple years ago. Don't answer calls when you're on the phone. It sounds crazy, but if you're making your calls and you're in your call block for 2 hours, or you could do hour on, 10-minute break, and then another hour, don't answer the phone. Now, I have built a system that my phone still gets answered. So I'm not saying the phone shouldn't be answered, but I'm just saying you as the originator shouldn't be answering the phone. So the best technology to overcome the call reluctance, because we all need to make more calls. I go off of 13 conversations, 3 face-to-faces, and 5 handwritten notes is my goal for every day. But how are you going to make 13 conversations if you get interrupted all the time, right? So yes, I'll call the person back, but I need to get through my calls. So do I do it every time perfectly? No, but the one thing that's helped me with is the dialer. So it's super simple. You load up the phone numbers in there, you call, it shows your caller ID, and I'm just calling people that I work with anyway. So it's all I even call my friends through it. So but it just makes it more efficient, and I can make more calls, and you could do like voicemail drops. So like, let's say you do the same voicemail, or let's say you're calling your in process and you want to tell them not to pull credit. You could do specific voicemail drops, and it can save you 40 minutes on calling, say 20, 25 people. It's a game changer.
And they're all hearing your voicemail and your voice. What's funny too is with cell phones these days, right? We all know that even when someone's not doing an intentional drop, all of a sudden you get that voicemail that shows up from the day before. So it matches right in. Wow, fascinating. What about anything, just technology trends for the industry that you think is coming that we need to be prepared for?
So I think there's a big push to automate more and more and more. But I also think that with automation, we're like tech enabled loan officers. So I think there's systems where, you put a referral in, and the referral automatically sends hey, I got referred to you by this person. It also updates the agent. And it moves a milestone. And then there's, a text and a voicemail and a email and all these other things that just happen automatically. And there's quite a few different companies like playing around with this automation that is on the front end of it. And so then there's things like, hey, a needs list went out. Well, what happens? I think one of our challenges is the front end needs list. So I don't know how to solve this, but let's say I need 5 things before I can let the pre-approval out. What if 2 of these things are most urgent, 3 of them I'll let slide? Right now we just email them, hey, upload it, right? But what happens if they don't provide that? Or what happens if I send a web link for them to go apply and they haven't applied in 3 days? Well, I'm calling them, or my team's calling them manually, and we're emailing them. Well, why not be in that bucket? If they haven't applied, they should get a call and text automatically. And so this is the stuff that the teams are really, really growing, are able to use this automation, and then the human element is able to take over what a human eye needs to be actually working on. So I think that's going to be really the trend that we're going to see is how do we automate not only the loan process, because I think I like it. I mean, H2O is great. I'm actually going to turn on more of the automation we have, a lot more actually. I think it's going to be good, but I think the front end is where I'm just kind of working through and how to automate some more of that. So I think that's the biggest trend we're seeing, where there's a couple of different CRMs that are playing around with it. I was actually just talking with the owner of Daily AI, and he just very interesting about how he views it. There's other things like Agent Legend, which is a lot of real estate agents use, that has a lot of that automation as well that I'm talking about. So that's the type of stuff. It's just it kind of scares me, because sometimes it's very fast. A lot of stuff's happening all at once, and you're like, okay, slow it down. But then you think about how many people you could reach with the automation. It blows using a dialer out of the water, because it all can happen at one time.
Yeah, it's fascinating you bring that up, because it's something that I think about is imagine and you probably know the number, but how many customers you've creations in H2O where you run a credit, right, or talk to them once or whatnot. And, while you're very good at what you do, there's always, if you could put those systems for just a little bit more interaction follow-up, what level of conversion could come out of those leads that you've already received, right? Does that change at all? And I think what you're saying is, and what we're going to see is more systems like that to help that, especially for, you're obviously on, a high achiever and do better, but there's a lot of individuals that are sitting at early parts of their career and aren't yet using those systems. So phenomenal.
Yeah.
What about, Kevin, so here's a question, you obviously, being and accomplished what you have, you probably have had people kind of give you advice along the way. And I would always say, many people, the question is going to be, hey, what's the piece of advice you received that was good? I actually ask the other way is, what piece of advice have you heard and you just laugh because it doesn't help, and it's something loan officers, when they hear it, they should ignore it?
What's funny is it's kind of like taking advice from me right now in a way, and I'll explain. So what you do at different stages of your business is different. So if you're starting out, there's different things you're going to have to be doing. And I used to see people doing 50 to 100 million going, I need to be doing what they're doing. Well, I need to be doing what they did to get there, not what they're doing necessarily now. And so I think that people don't always tell you the truth. I think there's a lot of times people realize that they had paid for a lot of business. They say, oh, you know what, I'm doing 50 million, 100 million now, but then I actually, they don't ever tell you that they had a co-marketing joint venture with a real estate agent that, teamed, huge office of 150 people. And then they're like, just go out there and make relationships happen. You're like, okay, how did you do it? Oh, I just, talk to a lot of people. And you're like, cool, I know that works, but so I think the key is you kind of have to, the advice is tough because to answer that question, I don't know exactly how to answer the bad advice.
I think you're getting it. I'm laughing at the piece because the best nugget that you just gave, and I will tell you, I've not heard that on any of these interviews, is somebody who's doing, just pick the number, 15 million a year, who wants to get 50. They talk to somebody who's doing 50 and say, what are you doing? And your advice is, wait a minute, you don't go from 15 to 50. There's stops along the way. And so what do you need to do? What, that got you from 15 to 20 and 25 to 35. I think that's a very important piece of advice for others early in their careers. You can make a lot of mistakes by jumping to putting a system at somebody's at 50 if you don't walk. That's a really, really good point.
So I'll give you the one advice I have for people, like there's all these systems and technology and all this stuff. When I started dabbling into that, I had a couple months into it, I said to stop. And I said, all I'm going to do is I'm going to try to add one person a day to my database. That's it. And that's honestly all it takes. If you can add one person, financial advisor, a client, of course, and they're all referral connected people, one a day, and you have good follow-up systems, that's the advice I would tell people that are early on. And then obviously there's a lot of other things, but that's the simple one, is just one a day to your database. I don't care if you use this Excel sheet or whatever, but that's the key.
All right, so now we get to go to the fun questions, the easy ones, or not. So what was your first paying job?
First paying job would probably be at my dad's shop, powder coating shop. If I can remember back, powder coating shop in California. He still has the shop today and has been, been in business since the 70s in California. And it's where I've learned a lot of like the just hard work and, this work's got to be done. Let's get it done and go in early, stay late, work weekends, now and have fun also.
Yeah.
So first paying job was one of the, like, he would pay us to come in and do like random wrapping of parts and other things. And there was one that was like, I'll pay you 1 penny for each of these you do, like, or I'll pay you this. Like, he'd play like little math games with us. But it was good for us to go in and help him with that. That was the first paying job. Is I would go in and do things like wrapping, or he'd help us, let us powder coat or paint a little bit and things like that. So we did sandblasting. Sandblasting was a pretty rough job, but it was fun early on.
Sounds, I'm sure it was not glamorous and not fun, but as a young kid or in high school or whatever, that it does sound pretty cool. What do you do for your part-time job? I'm a sandblaster,
Yeah, well, we did that. I did that probably when I was probably like 8 to 10 years old ish.
Yeah.
And then in
Wow.
high school, I actually sold family coat of arms in a little Danish town called Solvang. And so that's where that was kind of my high school job, is working there and interacting with people. And so that was,
Yeah.
it was great. I wish I jumped into the mortgage world back in the 90s, but should have
Yeah,
been
for sure.
a helper in the office there.
For sure. You and I both. That's awesome. What about anything unique in your, people call it the morning routine, but just as you approach your day, anything unique that you think gives you that edge?
About 2 years ago, probably maybe 2.5 years ago, I put my cell phone in a different room. So I am pretty good about waking up early. And only one of the reasons is because I had my alarm set at 5 o'clock for years. So I have to try to wake up as close to 5 o'clock. I don't worry about it if I get up at 5:30 or 5:45, if I stayed up late or working, whatever. I'm not overly worried about. I try to get up by 5:30 or sooner is my goal. And then, but I think the key there is getting your cell phone away from you at night so you can sleep and you just kind of disconnect. I think that's important. I put a other old cell phone next to me for a long time, just so you can feel like you have a cell phone next to you. But it wasn't really, it was just connected to Wi-Fi, so it didn't have all the stuff on there. I just had an alarm. People's biggest excuses is they needed their alarm on their phone, and you can get an alarm clock. So I think that's important. And then waking up and being able to, I wish I had a perfect routine. I've gone through different great routines, and then I fall off the horse. So, today I got out and I walked the dog and just get outside for a minute. I'm the type of person, I like to just get after it. I like to wake up, get to work, get in and out. I'm trying to be at work by 7:30. So I'm ahead of schedule. Sometimes I get in at 6 or 6:30 to be ahead of the day. I think the key is just to be a plan out your day. So what I do is I use win by noon, and you can use whatever schedule of thing you want. But the best way to do it is each Sunday is go through your calendar, write out your week, and then have a plan of what you're going to be doing that week. And then each morning you wake up and okay, here's what I'm doing. I do have one thing that I'll share is I looked at my life plan a couple of years back, and 8 years ago now. I looked at being available for my kids, and I take Wednesday mornings to take my kids to school, and I've done that for 6-7 years now. Wow. And that's awesome to be able to go. I take them every Wednesday. It is what it is, and then I do a late night Wednesday, so I shift it a little bit. Every other day, I'm kind of normal schedule. So it's more of like the week plan. So my goal is to work really hard between Monday and Thursday, and Friday is kind of my variable day. I took my Friday off for about 1.5 years, which is pretty awesome. So maybe I'll get back to that. We'll see.
Wow. Awesome. Okay. Last question is, this is a very stressful business at times. How do you handle, is there an activity that you as a release, or any other tips for people as they manage the stress of what we do?
I think you got to be able to turn it off. So I found different ways where I have a phone watch now where I could still be connected, but just turning the phone off for a little while. I took email off my phone a year ago. That was game changer. I don't have Teams or email on my phone. If you're an originator, it's crazy to have it on your phone.
Yeah.
I actually coached somebody to try to get them in New Mexico to get it off their phone, and he almost had a panic attack. And then finally I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to keep beating you then. And he's like, fine, I'm going to delete it. And then he deleted it. But so the managing the stress is when you're working, you work. When you're off, you're off. That's the key. If it always is this, oh, I got to get this out, or I got to get I understand. Last night I went home and I had to send a prequel letter out. It was fine. It was 6:30. I just got it out. Not a big deal. But you just can't. You got to have some sort of line of cutting it off. But it helps when you're super productive when you're at work. If you're
Mhm.
not super productive and you kind of dabble a little bit and then, oh, I get a call at 8:30 at night, let me answer that because I didn't really do that much today. No, be super productive during the day and then turn it off.
Yeah.
Like that's it. And that's the biggest thing that I found to help manage the stress. I've done meditation in the past where I've been a lot more stressed out. The other thing is you got to have great people around you that you trust that they're going to handle it, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the key is having to go back and like, oh, did you do this? Or did I, like, your job is to process a loan. That's your job. Like, but you got it, you know? I think the biggest stressors I've had in the past in this business is in not having clear lines of what people own.
Yeah.
And it's all on my shoulders. And that's really, really hard. And I think that's the biggest stressor I've had in the past. And having the team is huge, and the systems, and then being able to turn it off.
I think that's huge. There was I don't know what you call him, a coach or lifestyle guru, Zig Ziglar, one time when he said, when you're at work, be in the day before vacation mode, right? Where you're, know, every day, and then you turn it off. So awesome. Yep. Well, Kevin, I certainly enjoyed the time, and I know others as they hear this are going to be just very thankful for the tips and given your story. As from a personal perspective, you mean so much to this company, and we are very thankful for all you do. So the time you put in today and just every day, I couldn't be more thankful. And so really appreciate that.
I appreciate it, James. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Home Connection podcast from Caliber Home Loans. Please see the show notes for links to topics discussed in this episode, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.